Hey guys, Professor SentZ here, and welcome to the Lab Brief, a new segment in which we take a few minutes and talk about some concepts that are quick and easy to digest in between our main episodes. So I was meeting with a DJ student that I mentor last night, and we were talking about just some frustrations that she was having in terms of rehearsing and staying inspired with rehearsals, and also overcoming criticisms, during her live sets. And I offered her a couple of pieces of advice, and three pieces of advice that I offered kind of struck out as things that I think I should share with the community, because whether or not you're a DJ or a performing musician, a vocalist, whatever, I think we can all benefit from the philosophy. So with regards to her getting, frustrated with her rehearsal and not feeling like she was getting enough out of her practice segments, my initial advice was to record and listen to all of the practice sessions that she does, all of the gigs that she does, and listen back for flaws, but also for high points. So this way, when you go on to rehearse, you have a reference point of the flaws that you want to work on, and you're working more intelligently in your rehearsals. But also, you can take some time and make sure that you're refining the high points too, because those high points become the personal bit of flair that make you a better performer. So if you hear something in your recording, first of all, record your rehearsal, record your sets, always record and listen back. And if you hear something in that recording that you like, be sure to schedule some of your time in your rehearsal refining that and making it even better. So by the time you're on stage, you've internalized it and you can execute it every time. And the same goes for the converse. You want to make sure you're taking notice of what you were doing wrong, some of the mistakes you made, so that when you sit down and rehearse, you're not just rehearsing anything at random. You're rehearsing exactly what you need to practice. Okay? So my second piece of advice is also related to practicing, and that was to practice in smaller and more frequent segments to keep things fresh. Especially now that we have a more focused game plan when it comes down to how we're going to practice. I think if you've been feeling kind of tripped up, if you feel like you're not getting the proper gains out of your practice routine, kind of cut it in half in terms of how long it is and do it more frequently. So even if you're practicing once a day for an hour, consider 2 half-hour sessions throughout that day. Or if you're doing this marathon session twice a week, consider only doing half that time, but then doing that 3, 4, or 5 times a week. I think more consistent and more intelligent practice yields a lot more results than doing a marathon session of things that you're not really going to retain. All right. And the last thing was just a general frustration that she had with not feeling adequate enough when other DJs are in the room, other performers are in the room. And this is something that I struggled with too as a DJ. I always felt like I wasn't good enough for the other DJs that were inevitably in a New York City room. New York is full of artists, full of other performers. And I think it's really important to identify that the biggest criticisms that you'll get come from you, the artist, and from your fellow artists. But they don't come from the listeners and the fans of the music. In fact, you get a lot more support from the listeners and the fans of the music than you ever will from other artists. Part of which because these other artists look at you as competition, since you're performing while they're hanging out and you're doing something that they feel like they should be doing. The fact of the matter is you're going to make a lot of mistakes performing, but they weigh a lot less than you think they do. And it's really important to internalize that, especially because your body language can often steer a crowd away from acknowledging a mistake in the first place. So if you're the type of artist that understands that you're going to make mistakes and they're part of the process and people don't weigh on them too heavily, you'll respond out of it a lot quicker. You won't look defeated on stage. Whereas if you're a person that shows up, it'll show in your body and the crowd will react to that. I think you can lead people into thinking that a mistake isn't as bad as it really is if you handle it confidently and with grace. Okay? So that concludes the lab brief. If you'd like to support the podcast, please consider contributing to our Patreon page. That can be found at bit.ly/helpthelab. Again, that's bit.ly/helpthelab. Even $1 a month goes a long way in helping with our production costs. We want to get the podcast fully updated on SoundCloud. That involves subscription fees. So please help us out. Again, you can find us on Patreon at Lab Science Podcast in their search toolbar, or you can look us up at bit.ly.com/helpthelab. Thanks again. Until next time, Professor SentZ signing off. Be well. Peace.